Pope Francis delivers a message to journalists this week in Rome about how they cover the Vatican. What did he say? The National Catholic Register's senior correspondent, Edward Pentin, reports. And former Vatican doctrinal chief Cardinal Gerhard Müller joins us to weigh in on the growing controversy over the Vatican's document on same-sex blessings and more. The persecution of Christians is on the rise in many parts of the world. What is fueling it? Director of the Center for Religious Freedom, Nina Shea, is here with analysis. And finally, author Jessica Hooten-Wilson shares an unfinished novel by Southern author Flannery O'Connor. The World Over begins right now.
Now, Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me an X post. I'm at Raymond Arroyo. Let's begin. Pope Francis addressed journalists accredited to the Holy See Press Office at the Vatican this week. He thanked the press corps for their reportage on the church, scandals and all. Here to report is one such journalist, senior correspondent for the National Catholic Register, Edward Pentin. Edward, thanks for being here. In his remarks, the Pope encouraged reporters to base their work on, quote, the solid rock of responsibility for the truth, end quote, and not the shifting sands of gossip and ideology. The Pope then added the following improvised remark. I would like to add the delicacy that you so often have in speaking of scandals in the church. There are some, and many times I have seen in you a great delicacy, a respect, and almost, I say, abashed silence. Thank you for this attitude, end quote. Edward, what is your take on that comment, particularly where he thanks the press for what he calls abashed silence?
Yes, it's a rather strange comment, Raymond. I mean, I think what he's trying to get at primarily is that he thinks it's important to treat these issues with delicacy because they are scandal to the faithful, and so they need to be handled with care. But then he thanks, as you say, he thanks the journalists for an abashed silence. And of course, this is rather problematic because, of course, during the sex abuse crisis, the media, rather the church, was silent about these scandals. I didn't want them reported, and now he's saying, well, it's good that you're not actually reporting some of these scandals. And indeed, the media has been generally very friendly to the Pope. Of course, they have reported some scandals, but on the other hand, there have been times where they haven't, and especially even in the Catholic press, certain issues have been sort of passed over when they probably should have been talked about and reported, causing quite a lot of concern. I think I talked to a senior Vatican official earlier today, and he was saying that if any other world leader had said this, it would have been major news and major headlines, because he's basically saying, well, stay silent when there's a crisis and a scandal. So it's a rather strange comment. The only one that he actually made off the cuff. So interesting.
Edward, who is he talking to here? I mean, we have to paint the picture. It wasn't just anybody. This is, I call them, perhaps cynically, the kept puppies of the church. Look, I feel the same way about when I was a Capitol Hill correspondent. We were the kept puppies. And when you're a kept and fed puppy, you have to kind of toe the line, because if you report something outside the line, you get your hand slapped and they won't talk to you for a week or two.
Yes, it is a bit like that. I mean, I think the majority, sadly, the Vatican press corps does tend to be like that. That it tends to report, the positive stories in a sort of public relations way, without actually tackling the tough issues and asking hard questions, and also being critical about not just the scandals, but the accusations of heresy and blasphemy and sacrilege and heterodoxy that have grown up in this pontificate.
This address has been widely reported, especially in the Catholic press, as Pope Francis encouraging in-depth coverage of church affairs, including the more controversial and even scandalous stories that we've seen in recent months. Rupnik and same-sex blessings and the Beishu and Vatican finance story. Edward, is that what you and your colleagues heard from the Pope here?
On these scandals that you mentioned, I think he's he tended to be quite. He's kind of pushed them aside, and I think he's been happy that the media hasn't perhaps come onto them so strongly. And I think that's the case here. I think he's actually been quite. I think he's actually speaking his mind here, perhaps imprudently on his part by actually saying this, because I think he's sort of saying what he's thinking, which is that he's happy that there has been silence about these scandals. Before
we run out of time, I want to get your take on the growing dissent to Fiducia Supplicans, that document on same-sex blessings, really all over the world. Retired Hong Kong Cardinal Joseph Zen said this week that the document creates confusion and that the doctrinal head, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, should resign. How is the Vatican processing all of this and the growing list of bishops and bishops' conferences who are rejecting the document out of hand?
Well, as they often do, Raymond, they tend to ignore them. And it's interesting. Somebody once said to me the other about the way the Vatican treats scandals and bad news is that they tend to absorb them and then sort of suffocate them and hope that they just sort of die away. And I think that seems to be what they're trying to do here. They just tend to ignore it. There's been so many now comments criticizing this document and calling for Cardinal Fernandez's resignation too. But they all tend to be, and they just sort of hope they go away. And actually that tends to work. They do tend to go away, and they just move on to the next one.
Well, especially when you have a compliant press corps that kind of looks the other way and reports on, the renovation of the latest mural, or the Pope walked up and kissed a baby today. All those important breaking stories. In a related story here, I also want to mention this is the week of prayer for Christian unity and the ecumenism it attempts to promote. How is Fiducia, that this document on same-sex couples and blessing them, how is that affecting ecumenical relations with other faiths, and specifically with the Anglican Communion, whose bishops are meeting with their Catholic counterparts this week in Rome?
Well, I mean, the Orthodox Church has been quite strongly critical of this, and actually say that it's probably making it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to continue with ecumenical relations. But the Anglican Church is slightly different. I mean, they've sort of pushed this along quite strongly and for a long time now. And I was talking to a very senior Anglican leader only yesterday about this, and he was saying that that they're very supportive of Fiducia Supplicans and thinks it's a good thing. It's all part of more hospitality, bringing in every Eucharistic hospitality and bringing everyone in. And this particular official said that his views are almost identical to the Pope's. So it's interesting that the Anglicans seem to be very much on board with this. And see perhaps the Catholic Church is sort of following their lead, because they've, in many parts of the Anglican Communion, have already gone down this path.
Well, the pattern is even the same, because you had the Africans up in arms when the Archbishop of Canterbury and their synod approved these gay blessings many years ago, and it seems the same pattern is following in Catholicism. The Archbishop of Canterbury also, Edward, we should say, for the first time in my memory, and I think in anyone's memory from the folks I've spoken to in Rome, you had the Archbishop of Canterbury, with the Pope's permission, celebrating an Anglican communion at a Catholic church in Rome.
Well, it's interesting, Raymond, because this hasn't really made much of a headline, but it is quite unprecedented. At least I can't remember all the time I've been reporting on the Vatican in Rome of an Archbishop of Canterbury coming to celebrate an Anglican Eucharist in a Catholic church. And this isn't just any Catholic church; it's the Basilica of Saint Bartholomew, which is dedicated to the martyrs of the 20th century. But even so, it's which are all martyrs, whether they're Catholic or not, but Christian martyrs. But it is quite unprecedented, and I don't think, as I say, I don't think an Archbishop of Canterbury's done this before. So, but again, you see, only last year we had the Anglicans celebrating their Eucharist in St. John Lateran, which caused a huge scandal. But it now seems to be that wasn't such a mistake. It was probably planned. But as somebody said to me tonight, it's all part of really turning the church into a more political organization than a church one, by letting everyone come and receive the Eucharist, whoever they are. And this is causing, again, concern for a lot of people.
Confusion, more confusion. And, you know, it's a curious moment in history that we've reached, Edward, where in a Catholic church, in an esteemed and historic Catholic church in the heart of Rome, you can celebrate the Anglican liturgy, but you daren't celebrate the old Tridentine rite. We will leave it there. Thank you, Edward Pentin. You can follow Edward's reports at Edward Pentin or at the NC Register. Thanks so much, Edward.
Thank you, Redmond.
I now want to go to theologian and former head of the Vatican's doctrinal office, Cardinal Gerhard Müller, who joins us from our Rome studio. Your Eminence, thank you for being here. Pope Francis recently commented on the growing resistance that I just talked to Ed about to Fiducia Supplicans. That's the document that allows the blessing for same-sex couples. In an Italian TV interview, the Pope said the following: "The Lord blesses everyone who is capable of being baptized, that is, every person. But we are to take them by the hand and help them go down that road, not condemn them from the beginning." Your Eminence, Pope Francis also said that the resistance to this document arises because in most cases, critics just don't understand it. Cardinal Mueller, is calling a sinner to repentance the same as condemnation? And do you not understand this document?
I think this whole document is a failed project. The intention was to introduce all these people, marginalized people living in sin and the edges of the church, but the methods are not the best ones. Jesus gave us the introduction how to introduce these people by saying the gospel to them, to lead them the way of Jesus Christ, and to repent the sins, and so to listen to the gospel and to come to the holy sacraments. Jesus gave for us his life, and the cross of Jesus Christ and his resurrection. These are the ways for our salvation, and not only a goodwill that to everybody. Like the Freemasons, they are speaking of the fraternity of everybody without an obligation, without a conversion, without changing your life and the imitation of Jesus Christ. In the marriage, it's God himself who blessed the husband and the wife, and we as a priests, as representatives of Christ, the head of the church, we have to follow him and not to grow confusion to everybody in the world. And the effect was tremendous for the church. Now the church is more divided than every time before, and it's not only sufficient to have a good will, but also to look what will be the consequences.
Your Eminence, the growing resistance worldwide to Fiducia Supplicans is really something we've never seen. I mean, particularly in non-Western countries and continents like Africa. In fact, Cardinal Kurt Koch, the prefect of the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, said, "I am getting some negative reactions from the ecumenical world about this document." Now, my question is, given this unprecedented reaction from all corners of the world, the Dutch, the Africans, Hungary, over this document, what do you think will eventually have to be done here? Will it have to be rescinded?
This document must be rewritten in the clear Catholic theological understanding. On the one hand was said there is no change in the doctrine. On the other hand, you can ask why was necessary to give this document if it's not a doctrinal change, and we cannot change the doctrine about marriage and the human sexuality, because all is given in the creation, in the word of God is revealed to us, and if we are obedient to the word of God, we cannot change the doctrine. And the Pope and the bishops are instituted by Jesus Christ to protect the right understanding of the revelation once and forever given in Jesus Christ and the apostles in the early church. 2 years ago, there was given another document which said the church has no authority to bless same-sex couples. And now is it in an unclear way is that it's possible, but it's not possible. We can bless the single person of a couple, but not the couple of the single persons. Nobody is able, with a Norman logic education, to understand what it is.
No one can make heads or tails of this document, Your Eminence. And look, you have the head of the African Bishops' Conference who came out this week, and he explained how he and Cardinal Fernandez at the doctrinal office, working with Pope Francis, essentially wrote a new document prohibiting these same-sex blessings in the continent of Africa. How can you carve out this continent but not the next one? And is that truly one, Catholic and universal?
Now we have a new situation, a little bit similar, that now the African churches, Catholic churches, are the leaders in this way of the correction of a failed document. And I think we cannot relativize the Africans only saying that's their culture, but their culture in this aspect is better than our decadence culture in the West. And therefore it is a very important moment in the church history that now the Africans are entering the place and taking over the leadership in the Catholic Church, and it's a very good thing they are doing.
Your Eminence, as I mentioned to Ed Pentin earlier, Cardinal Joseph Zen, the embattled Bishop Emeritus of Hong Kong, has condemned this document, this Fiducia Supplicans, even calling for the prefect of the Doctrine of Faith, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, to resign. He writes, if the prefect of the DDF is not committing a heresy by claiming a serious sin as good, then shouldn't the prefect resign or be dismissed? Cardinal Mueller, as the former head of the doctrinal office, your reaction to Cardinal Zen's assessment and his call for the resignation of Cardinal Fernandez?
They must decide the Pope himself, and has to listen all to the voices are coming out from the world, and we cannot. Nobody can say this. All these bishops and cardinals were not able to understand what was written. We all have studied theology and taught theology in the universities, and we can understand a text of 20 pages. There's no problem for us. We have studied theology, not gynecologist. We don't all the details like others. No, this is not necessary. But to know what is written in the Holy Scripture and in the tradition and the doctrine of the Church, that is important for us theologian, and not anatomic details. There are the specialities of other professions.
I saw that allusion you dropped there. That was a good one. Your Eminence, you recently gave an interview to Crisis Magazine about the Pope's authority in the Church. And you said, quote, the Catholic Church is not the Pope's church, and Catholics are therefore not papists, but Christians. How should we understand the Pope's teaching authority and the limits placed upon it? Are there limits?
First Vatican Council formulated this dogma of the infallibility of the Pope and his primate in the jurisdiction and in the leadership, we can say, gave a very clear definition of the importance and also of the limits of this authority of the Pope. And for us, for the Catholics, it's absolutely clear that the primacy of the Bishop of Rome as successor of St. Peter is an institution, divine institution of divine right. And there's no doubt that the Bishop of Rome is a visible principle of the unity of the whole church, worldwide church, in the revealed truth in Jesus Christ. But we have to distinguish the office of the Pope and the person, the actual Pope, with his human limits, with his moods, with his emotions, and with all the limits everybody has. And it is very important that the advisors of the Pope, the cardinals, they are the official advisors of the Pope, and not a small group of friends, so-called friends. The cardinals, they must, like just St. Thomas Aquinas said, there is needed check and balances. Because everybody has his limits, and therefore the Pope needs good advisors, also sometimes critical advisors, and not adulators. And with this we must distinguish between the office of the Pope to underline and to present the revealed truth and the faith from his private and personal meanings and prejudices as a Latin America against the United States, and all this, for me, not so understandable prejudices, but everybody has his limits. And the Pope, especially the Pope, with all these consequences every word of him will have in the world. If he gives an interview, all the people is listening. The Pope had said, the Pope had said, the Pope had said this as his personal opinion, but not as the pronunciation and the exclamation, presentation of the revealed Catholic faith. And we must learn to distinguish it better, and therefore this would be very important that the coming popes are more careful in the presentation of what they are saying in the papal office and what they are saying beside in private interviews about aspects and themes and problems in the world, which are problems, and it is interesting to know what is the actual Pope is thinking about it, but it's not the same as the proclamation of the revealed faith.
Before I let you go, I need to get your thoughts on the continuing purge of the traditional Latin Mass in the wake of that Guardians of the Tradition document, particularly here in the U.S. In the Diocese of Covington, Kentucky, the bishop has removed the faculties of 2 priests who said publicly that the post-Vatican II Novus Ordo was, quote, irrelevant. Cardinal Mueller, your thoughts on the speed, the intensity, and the heavy-handed tactics being deployed against priests who celebrate the old rite or voice their opinions about the new or the old rite?
As the Holy Mass is dogmatically instituted by Jesus Christ and has this, there's a doctrine about the Holy Mass, but the rites are different in the Catholic Church, and every rite has a certain history and a certain variation, and therefore nobody can be absolutely identify the essence of the sacraments and the ritual liturgical form, and therefore surely the Second Vatican Council had made a reform and a renewal of the liturgical thinking and the liturgical practice, and a certain reform of the liturgical rites. But the Vatican didn't, the Council didn't change the doctrine. about it, and therefore here is needed a more sensibility, pastoral sensibility and acceptation of those priests and faithful who prefer the Latin Mass in the Latin Rite in the older form, and not to make this question to a question of faith and dogmatics, but is only a question of the discipline, of the liturgical discipline. And therefore there is needed by so bishops who want to be good shepherds, not to look to Rome and to say to the Holy Father, I suppress these people, and therefore I look for reward to become promoted, become archbishop or cardinal, and this childish behavior of some bishops we have. But to have the responsibility, it is more important that there is celebrated the Holy Mass in what form and of the rite, whatever it is, than that the people are angry with the church and they will leave the church. We cannot say we have closed a traditional Mass parish and not to care for these people where they are now going to.
We just watched a little while ago the Archbishop of Canterbury celebrating the Anglican rite in St. Bartholomew's in Rome, yet priests of the Roman rite can't celebrate the old Latin Mass there. I mean, there's something wrong here. I'll give you the final word.
It's a ridiculous contradiction, no? Because for us the Latin Mass, in the Latin rite in the Western Church, there's a Latin rite, has different forms. Also the Ambrosian rite, and therefore we have a certain variety of forms of the same liturgy, and what is belonging to the liturgy, the Holy Mass of the Anglicans, we as Catholics don't accept, with all respect, but dogmatically, the magisterium doesn't accept the validity of the priesthood of them, and therefore there is not a valid Holy Mass. And this is not only a question of you are open or not open. This all the time is the same. There are made decisions without a theological and dogmatic fundament, only for looking good and to looking open and I am so liberal, and you can make what you want, but if you are not obedient in secondary questions, they are coming with the authority and with penalties and all these things with the authority. It is very needed that we have a more clear theological basis of the concrete decisions, and it is not so difficult. You must only read this Vatican Council, and they will see all. There's a good basis for practical decisions.
Yes. You make such a great point about the kind of virtue signaling, in appearing open, but it creates and sows seeds of confusion. And that's what I think is so heartbreaking for so many, because neither the Anglicans nor the Catholics know where anybody stands when this is over. Your Eminence, Cardinal Gerhard Müller, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
According to Open Doors, more than 365 million Christians in 50 countries suffer from persecution and discrimination because of their faith. In parts of Africa, 1 in every 5 Christians suffer some kind of persecution. This is especially true in Nigeria, where advocates, including my next guest, have called on the Biden administration to respond to the ongoing wave of persecution in that country. Joining me now to discuss the situation, not only in Nigeria and other parts of the world, Director of the Center for Religious Freedom at the Hudson Institute, Nina Shea. Nina, thanks for coming back. According to Open Doors, a staggering 90% of all Christians killed for their faith are killed in Nigeria. Over Christmas, we saw the 140 Christians just massacred in that country. Yet earlier this month, the Biden administration rejected recommendations from leading human rights groups, religious freedom groups, like your own, to reverse course, and they failed to designate Nigeria as one of the worst offenders of religious freedom in the world. Why? Why did they remove them from that list?
Well, Raymond, you're right. It is the worst place in the world. Open Doors has even come out just this month saying that there are more Christians killed in Nigeria for their faith than everywhere else in the world combined. And yet it's been left off this list because the administration's analysis is that this is the results of climate change, not religious animus. And that's absurd because these Christians are being targeted. There's a larger situation of lawlessness in Nigeria, but they're systematically being attacked in these massacres, largely by Fulani militants. These are nomadic tribe of Muslim militants. And they're yelling Allahu Akbar as they slaughter the Christian farmers in their fields, in their beds at night. They're going after Catholic priests, Methodist bishops, even a couple of imams who are too moderate for their taste. So it's definitely a religious motive behind this. And the other part of this is that, which is critical for this country of particular concern list, the world's worst countries for religious persecution, is that the government of Nigeria, Abuja, lets this go on with impunity. No one is ever arrested, prosecuted, and charged for these crimes. And millions of Christians have been driven from their lands, are now internally displaced within Nigeria, totally mendicant, totally dependent on aid, whatever the aid they can get through the church usually, lost their livelihoods, lost some of their loved ones, lost their farms. And the government does nothing to stop it.
Yeah, Blinken was just there. And I know he's under some pressure because in addition to, this human massacre of Christians, you also have these indiscriminate military attacks where they're bombing refugee camps and, and they claim, oh, it was a mistake. Why won't they, A, condemn this regime and rein it in? We give them a lot of aid. I know you've sent a letter to Congress, along with Congress, rather, asking them to respond to the Department of State's failure to adequately address all of this systematic, ongoing religious persecution. What response have you received?
Well, we have received no response except a rejection of our proposal to name it in this list, which is a fairly, moderate step. It's simply to identify them and put some pressure on the government. They do receive $1 billion a year in U.S. foreign aid. And, wow. And it keeps going up because the situation keeps spiraling out of control. This is Africa's most populous country. It's one of its wealthiest. It's probably its wealthiest. Yet there really is very little attention to this problem of lawlessness. It starts with attacks on the religious minorities, particularly the Christians, which is very large. It's almost half the country, half the population. And then it spirals out, and it spins out of control. It never stays with just the Christian after many years. It started with the kidnapping of Christian girls, Leah Sharibu, who's still a slave now after being kidnapped from her school, and the Chibok schoolgirls, the same thing. And then it started attacking all schools. These militants. Some of them just wanting to shut down Western-style education, others wanting just money and hostages. So it's really not going to help American interests to have a destabilized regional influencer like Nigeria in the clutches of not just one, but 3 or 4 or 5 Islamic extremist groups, Boko Haram, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, they're all there. And now the Fulani Muslims are becoming radicalized. Not all of them, but some of them.
Wow. Inter-Society, a Nigeria-based nonprofit, has reported that 52,000 Christians have been killed and more than 14 million Christians forced to flee Nigeria since 2009. How is this not a religious genocide, Nina? And explain to me how the Biden administration figures that this is climate change in action.
And they also found out that 18,000 churches have been burned or damaged. And this is happening in, what's very vivid and clear is when you look at one of their states, Benue State, it's in the northern central part of Nigeria, right outside of Abuja, not far, and it's the capital. And it's about 90% Christian. And this year, I think just in this past 12 months or so, they've had 2 million Christians internally displaced because of wave after wave of these Fulani massacres, again, attacking farmers. And the Fulani don't live there. They are invading from outside, from another state or maybe even another country. And when these Christians flee to the refugee camps, internal camps for aid, because they have to leave their villages, they're attacked there too. So they're going after them, not just for land, but because they don't want their presence at all in the country.
Awful situation. Well, we've been covering it for years. We have to keep our eyes on it and make sure the audience knows about it. But Congress should step in, and certainly the administration. I want to move on, Nina, to China, where earlier this month, Catholic Bishop Peter Shea was arrested by security forces who told him to, quote, bring clothes for every season. Bishop Shea was, by the way, ordained by Benedict XVI by papal mandate in 2011. However, he is not recognized by the Communist Chinese authorities due to his refusal to join the Patriotic Association. And this is not the first time that this bishop has been arrested. Have Chinese authorities given any reason for his arrest this time? Or does anyone have any idea why he was taken?
No, there's no reason. There's no, except that he hasn't joined this patriotic group, which means that he refuses to take a vow of distancing himself, of independence from the Vatican, from the Pope. So because he remains a faithful to the Pope and to the Catholic doctrine, he is being taken away. And he's usually been taken away, multiple times over the years, maybe 7, 8 times, for various lengths of time, sometimes most of a year. And he's sometimes just taken away for special holy days or holidays so that he cannot say Mass. And this time it was very ominous because they told him to bring clothes for all seasons, indicating that he'd be there for a long time. But this is completely without due process. So there is no trial. There's no charges.
But Nina, where is the Vatican in all of this? I mean, and I want you to tie it to this story that's breaking today. Bishop Thadio Wang Huxiang, who was consecrated a bishop within the framework of this Vatican-China agreement today. Pope Francis made his episcopal appointment back in December, but we're only hearing news of it once the man's already consecrated. What is going on here?
The Vatican is clinging to this agreement as if China's upholding it, but China's not. Beijing has breached the agreement several years ago, about 2 years ago, and the Vatican does not want to criticize Beijing in any way, so that it will, in fact, go further than that. They will praise Beijing, saying it upholds climate standards, which it doesn't. It's one of the worst. So it praises China and refuses to criticize them, even when their own bishops are being appointed behind their back. I mean, when Beijing is appointing their own bishops behind the Vatican's back, or when they're putting the Pope's consecrated bishops in with a papal mandate in prison or in secret black jails. This is unofficial detention centers, which is where Bishop Shea is today.
Is that what you think happened here? That Beijing dropped this bishop on Rome, so that's why it's kind of coming out? We only learn about it during the consecration. rather than an earlier announcement and a formal appointment by Rome?
Yes, I think that under the agreement, the Vatican has indicated that the Pope has a say. He at least has a veto power, and it turns out not to be true in a number of cases, the last number of episcopal appointments by Beijing. And he has, ex post facto, the Pope has agreed with it, but didn't have any advance notice, much less a right to veto. So that's the problem here, and it's a fiction. It's a legal fiction at this point. And the Pope, for the sake of unity, he says he's going along with these bishops, but these bishops, may not be, are not his choice. And Peter Shea, the Bishop Shea, who did have a papal mandate, one of the reasons that they think that his diocese thinks that he was put away in this black jail just this month is that he wrote a letter to a priest in his diocese who was appointed by the Patriotic Church, who started transferring parishes away out of the diocese and doing things without the episcopal approval of Peter Shea, Bishop Shea. And he said that's a violation of canon law. And he wrote that letter, and the next thing he knew, he was under arrest and thrown into a secret detention place.
We have to pray for all those people in China, particularly the faithful clergy and parishioners. It's a tragedy there, and the fact that Rome is blessing this makes it even worse and makes the wound deeper. Nina Shea, thank you for all your reportage on this and your ongoing vigilance of the persecution of Christians worldwide. You can learn more at hudson.org. Thank you, Nina.
Thank you, Raymond.
When one of the great American Catholic short story writers of the 20th century, Flannery O'Connor, passed away in 1964 at the age of 39, she left behind an unfinished work, a novel that would have been her third. Deemed unpublishable, it remained in the O'Connor archive until now. My next guest took on the task of editing the unfinished manuscript. To tell us all about it, I'm joined by the Fletcher Jones Endowed Chair of the Great Books at Pepperdine University. She's also the author of Flannery O'Connor's Why Do the Heathen Rage? A behind-the-scenes look at a work in progress. Please welcome back to the program, Jessica Hooten-Wilson. Whew, I know that's a long intro. Look, as you know, Jessica, I'm a huge O'Connor fan. But before we get to your version of Why Do the Heathen Rage, I want to revisit something we spoke about when you were last here. We talked about the role of suffering in the search for God, and Flannery O'Connor struggled with lupus her entire writing career, and I think it bears repeating a quote of hers. She said this about suffering and the characters she created. It has always seemed necessary to me to throw the weight of circumstances against the characters I favor. The friends of God suffer. How does O'Connor's work utilize suffering to demonstrate its power and how it can draw one to God?
I think it's important to distinguish between suffering that is being instrumentally used by God versus an idea that God himself is making his people suffer. There are things that make us suffer in the world, but we always want to distinguish that it's not God doing it, right? It's the sinfulness of human beings, it's the fallenness of the state of the world. And Flannery saw that, and it was with her teeth bared, looking at suffering in the face and saying, okay, what does it mean to be refined by this suffering like it's a purgatorial fire? And so that's what you get to see in her work, is that characters can either choose to see suffering is going to burn them up towards damnation, or it's going to burn them towards purging and refining them. And I think that's what's beautiful about what happens in Flannery's stories.
Well, and this brings us to your latest project, Flannery O'Connor's Why Do the Heathen Rage? This behind-the-scenes look at a work in progress. How were you chosen, or how did you choose yourself to complete, if you will, Flannery's unfinished novel?
It's a little.
And what were you dealing with in the archives?
Sure, it's a little bit of both and on that. I was excited to do it. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity. But Billy Sessions, who was the one who did her prayer journal several years ago, and he was able to put that out. He was a friend of Flannery's. He was very well versed in her archives. In 2009, we had dinner and we discussed what was in her archives. And he said, if you love Dostoevsky, you're going to love Flannery's unfinished novel. It was the first I'd heard about it. So I headed straight to the archives. I started working on it. And when I showed Billy what I was working on, he said, you know what, you're the one to put this out. You're the one to finish it, and brought it to the attention of the estate. So we went from there, and it's been almost 15 years trying to get this to put out in the right way.
Well, and the story is pure O'Connor, but one can see how there might have been some hesitation to publish this, given the story's central theme of race. I mean, it's set, of course, in the South. The main character is a young white intellectual, Walter Tillman, who pretends to be black in his correspondence with a white woman, Una, who's a New York social justice activist. Tell us a bit about the plot and the other themes O'Connor wrote about this story.
Sure. It is pure O'Connor, as you said. So the character of Walter should remind us so much of Flannery, who also had gone off to schooling, so to speak, in the North, and then returned to her Southern world. And her Southern world in the 1960s was a very segregated world. So it's the world that Walter Tillman, her character, lives in. And in this world, he is challenging the people around him by writing letters to them and pretending to be someone other than who he is. In this case, he puts on what I call epistolary blackface. So you're right, this would be a difficult thing to publish at this time. But what happens in the work is Flannery, in a sense, is challenging her own preconceptions, the problems she had in her own world about race and the things that she thought were problematic, even in the 1960s. This is before Lyndon B. Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act. You have Flannery taking on this issue and wanting to understand, you know, how is everyone made in God's image? What does it look like to really love your neighbor? And it's through this character that she puts in this circumstance that she's really able to ask those questions.
Now, since the work was unfinished and you had to pour through not only typed pages of manuscript as well as O'Connor's handwritten notations, you had kind of a monumental task here organizing this thing. How did you decide to organize the material, and what was your guiding principle as you made decisions about what to leave in or omit?
It took a lot of different forms over the last decade or so, trying to get this correct and having a lot of input from people. I would send drafts to others and get their feedback, O'Connor scholars, from novelists, from writers and memoirists, just what is the right way to tell this story. And I think the more that I involved other people in the conversation, I began to see that that's what was beautiful about this story. This story was a way of showing that a woman was in progress herself, and that she was sharing her story with us, and she was, in a sense, asking us to be a part of it. And as I went through the process in that way, I started forming a narrative that said, okay, what do we wonder? What do we hope for this work? When we read this, what are our responses? How does this put us into a community, I think, in the way that Flannery wanted her work to be, part of the church and part of its activity? And so I hope that that was kind of my guidance as I went through. In what ways could I be faithful to her, but also draw people into her story?
Why was the work left unfinished at the time? I mean, obviously she died, but it wasn't only her passing that interrupted the publication here.
Right. Well, many of her two novels took the longest. As you started the introduction, you said, you know, she's a famous short story writer. That's what she was really good at. So I think part of it was a difficulty she always had in writing the longer genre. But also, of course, the issues of race. She did not have black friends, and she's trying to write about a character who puts on blackface through the mail. She did not live in an integrated world, even though she said that that is something that by principle she desired. And so she had those hurdles to kind of overcome. And then lastly, it was her sickness. She fainted, you know, a year before she died in November of 1963 and was battling her sickness until her death. So it was also the sickness that kept her quite a bit from working on the story she wanted to tell.
Give me a sense about what the public can expect here in when they pick up Why Do the Heathen Rage. Is it complete? What is it? I know it's her last novel, but what are you presenting them with, and how does it fit in with her other work?
I think it's important to stress, and we tried to on the cover, that this is a work in progress. It's an unfinished novel. I call it a literary excavation. It is a behind-the-scenes look at the material. So the places that I found that were compelling in her story, the scenes that felt finished rather than the whole novel being finished, and I put those scenes into a context of what was Flannery reading at the time, what was she thinking about, what was going on in the news, who was around her, and how can we read these stories and get to see the fuller picture and try to imagine what she would have done with the material later had she lived.
I know when you study a work of an individual intently for a long period of time. I remember transcribing Mother Angelica's addresses and teachings, and you start to hear their voices in your sleep. You inevitably learn something you didn't expect. What surprised you about O'Connor's work as you immersed yourself in it?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I don't think I understood her as a stylist as well as I did later. Once I started realizing how closely she attended to every word, that in some pages she would cross out one word and then the next day return to it and then the next day cross it out. And she was regularly just looking word by word. And I would go back and read her other short stories that were published during her lifetime that she did revise. And I saw how carefully she crafted every single word. And suddenly the sacramental world she was creating, where each word meant more than just its superficial or its literal sense, but had a spiritual significance, I could read her in a stronger way than I'd ever read her before.
How did her Catholic faith manifest in this work? Did it show itself plainly
Absolutely,
to you?
Absolutely. I think that is another attribute that we get to see in this story that's different than the works she had published before. Instead of startling her character into a conversion, she said she wanted to be like Elijah hearing God's voice in a still small voice while he's in the cave. And so in a sense, we have Walter coming to God through a still small voice rather than a shocking drama or, a stabbing by a gore by a bull or, we don't have some of those like violent moments. We instead get this still small voice that she was working on.
Well, I can't wait to read this more deeply, because while I appreciate the still small voice, I still like the 2x4 over the middle of the head that Flannery O'Connor usually delivers to us. We will leave it there. Flannery O'Connor's Why Do the Heathen Rage? A behind-the-scenes look at a work in progress, compiled and edited by Jessica Hooten-Wilson, is available now at bookstores everywhere and online. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you very much.
Before we go, some very sad news. Mary Jane Murray, the beloved mother of our own Father Gerald Murray, passed away this week at the age of 90 years old. Ms. Murray was a committed Catholic, an accomplished attorney, as well as a devoted wife and mother. She's now reunited with her beloved husband, the late Gerald E. Murray Sr., who passed away in 2017. May Mary Jane Murray rest in peace, and please keep Father Jerry and the Murray family in your prayers. God rest Mary Jane's soul. That is all the time we have for now. Be sure to catch the show next week, though I'm not going to tell you who'll be here. You'll have to come back and see it, but it's a doozy. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Bye now.